Hello, sports fans, and welcome. Welcome to episode 224 of the GURU Talkin Sports podcast. I am your host, the Guru of Sports. I want to tell you guys that last weekend was Father's Day, and it was it was just an amazing day. You know, last year, Dante was out here, and he took me and Caden to a ball game we went down and we saw my dad and we had a pretty good time. Now this year, Caden got tickets for me and him, and we basically went down and had a pretty good father and son time down at the ballpark. It was even better because the Orioles won. The Phillies thought they could come into the house and, come into our house and try to take over, but they didn't. And, we beat the Phillies 2 out of 3 games last weekend. I mean, it was a great time. I really appreciate the things that my sons have done for me. And, that's one of the things that I look at when, as being a father, you don't really, I don't want any, I didn't want anything from these guys, because the thing about it is that they're supposed to succeed on their own. And, with me and, talking to Caden and everything and having the full time that we had spent together, I come to realize that he's not a young man, a little man anymore. He's a big kid. I mean, not a big kid. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking, spitballing, because it's just that as a father, I worry about both of them. I worry about both of these guys because, they're mine. They're mine. And I truly want to make sure that they are okay, no matter what. Yesterday, I was on the phone with Dante for a while. And he was telling me that he was traveling. He was traveling from Dallas to Atlanta by car. And, one of the things I always tell everyone, if you on the road or so, and if you, going somewhere, just call me and make sure that you got there safely. Caden, when he leaves the house here, I always tell him, snap me when you get home. Caden's one of those kids that loves Snapchat. So, with him it's Snapchat. Snapchat me when you get home. I'll get the notification and I'll know that you got home safely. Dante the same way. I told him, I said, text me when you get home. You don't have to call. You just give me a text. I noticed that my dad was the same way too. Because one of the things that he always said, like when me and Caden left, he said, call me when you get home. Now, my dad's getting up there a little bit in age. So what I did was I text his wife because, sometimes he don't remember the text back or whatever. But I text his wife and told him that I made it home safely. Now I'm just waiting for Caden to get home safely. I mean, one of the things is that we care about our kids and we make sure that they are always okay. Like I said, hey, I'm not the perfect father. I've never been the perfect father. But the thing about it is that I want to make sure that I do everything in my power to make sure that these kids, these two guys, are well taken care of. And, you know, when me and Caden was together, I told him, I said, hey, look, you know, I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed. I want you to eclipse what I've done. You know, one of the things that I love for is to make sure that these kids, these grown young men, are better than me, no matter what. You know, well, with all that said, I wanted to talk about one thing this week. When I got the news about Willie Mays, it really hit me. Really hit me hard. You know, Willie was the last, I think one of the last of the great old school ball players that played back in that time with the 50s and the 60s with Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Duke Snider, Mickey Mantle, all those guys. You know, that's one of the things that I always remember about those good old days of baseball was all those guys. You know, I was a kid of the 70s. Yeah, I know that was a long time ago. But yeah, I was a kid of the 70s. But, you know, I didn't really see much of Willie play. I saw him basically at the end of his career. And it was, to me, it was really a sad time to see one of the greats just basically, you know, didn't make it through, you know. Willie had a great sense of him because he was basically the, you know, he was a say hey kid. He was the guy that always smiled, boyish charm, and just loved the game of baseball. I'm really, I was really saddened by this because the last couple of weeks we had to go through 3 weeks of mourning, more or less, for Bill Walton, Jerry West, and now Willie Mays. It seems as though that my childhood is gone, leaving me, more or less. I know that, you know, it's hard to say, but, you know, my childhood was, like I said, growing up in the 70s, remembering, like I said, I remember the tail end of Roberto Clemente, the tail end of Willie Mays, and all these great ball players. Willie McCovey, all these guys were at the tail end. You know, I did get a chance to, you know, see some of the greats, though. You know, I did get a chance to see the Big Red Machine, Johnny Bench, Dave Concepcion, Pete Rose. I saw, you know, some of the really great ball players and greatest baseball players and stuff of all time. Carlton Fisk, I saw him live play. You know, like I said, this with Willie was it's really tough because it just reminded me of an era of baseball that is just long gone. You know, I really, really love the game of baseball. I basically, from I'll say the first 30 years of my life, wanted to be a baseball player. That was my dream. That was my hope and my dream. And like I said, I actually I studied a lot of different baseball players. Willie Mays was one of those I studied because, you know, I couldn't do the basket catch as good as he could. But when he had that swing, the swing he had was beautiful. And the way he got out of the batter's box was a thing of beauty. You know, I actually wrote up something this week when I was thinking about Willie Mays. And we always talk about the 5-tool player. Now I'm going to give you an example of what a 5-tool. If you had to make Willie Mays as a baseball player, this is what you have to have. You have to have these ingredients to make the perfect 5-tool player. Now, we all know the 5 tools: run, hit for average, hit for power, throw, and field. All right, let's start with run. Willie Mays has over 300 stolen bases. He's one of 3 guys in the Hall of Fame that has, well, 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame. A-Rod isn't. But 600 home runs and 300 stolen bases. If you had to compare him to a runner, I could compare him to probably Rickey Henderson and Lou Brock as a runner. Speed. Run and, stolen base ability, awareness of how to steal, the art of stealing bases. Okay, let's go with hit for average. If you had these ingredients, Tony Gwynn and Wade Boggs, 2 of the best hitters of all time, that would be our second ingredient for the perfect 5-tool player. Let's go for hit for power. Now, you know he has 660 home runs. And the only 2 that was above him for the longest time was Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron. And those 2 are the ultimate hit for power guys. And I know that, if you've seen the broadcast of the Rickwood, and I'm going to talk about that before the end of this, there's only 2 guys that I think is above him: Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth. That would be our third ingredient. Our fourth ingredient would probably be throw, and throw for accuracy. The only 2 that I can remember I've seen that had powerful rifle arms and able to throw accurately was Roberto Clemente and Dave Parker. 2 of my favorites that I got a chance to, see in my lifetime. So that was the fourth ingredient. The fifth ingredient is fielding. Now, if you one of the best fielders, and like I said, you know, we all know about the catch that he made, you know, and Willie said that, hey, look, you think that was a great catch that I did in the World Series in 1954 against the Cleveland Indians? Well, that game was 2-2 tied. Vic Wertz hit the ball, and you remember the images of that were just amazing. How they recreated and made those images back, you know, brought it back on our television screens and everything. That was amazing. So, fielding, I would say you would have to have Brooks Robinson and Andrew Jones, two of the best fielders I've ever seen. So we made the 5-tool player. And again, run would be Ricky Henderson and Lou Brock. Hit for average would be Tony Gwynn and Wade Boggs. Hit for power would be Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth. Throwing for accuracy, Dave Parker and Roberto Clemente. And fielding, Andrew Jones and Brooks Robinson. If you had those ingredients, you were the perfect 5-tool player. And Willie Mays was the perfect 5-tool player. You know, he had a lot of hits. I mean, he had over 3,200 hits, almost 3,300 hits. You know, I can also compare him to Stan Musial. Stan Musial was one of the greatest hitters of all time. You know, Pete Rose. You know, I know a lot of people, you know, don't talk about Pete Rose, but Pete Rose was, you know, one of the greatest hitters I've ever seen live, personally. You know, and it's a shame that he's just not in the Hall of Fame. You know, I always make that statement about Pete Rose. I had a chance to meet Pete Rose, and, you know, he was a little arrogant, but the thing about it is that he was actually nice to me. You know, I asked Pete Rose, I said, hey, I really enjoyed you winning that World Series for the Philadelphia Phillies back in 1980. He said, oh, no problem, but I'll tell you one thing. You were a baby back then, wasn't you? And I said, yeah. You know, me and Dante got a chance to meet Pete Rose one while back. And he signed a ball and a bat for us. And I have a bat that is autographed by Pete Rose. But let's get back on the subject of Willie Mays. Like I said, if you had the 5-tool player, that would be Willie Mays. You know, he came along a little bit earlier than Hank Aaron. And like I mentioned before, that we was, you know, this week has been basically about the Negro Leagues and talking about Rickwood, the game at Rickwood, which I got a chance to see. It was amazing. It was amazing. Now, I actually have Rickwood on my bucket list. Now, you know that he started out for the Birmingham Black Barons in Rickwood Field. You know, I just, like I said, when I think of Willie Mays, it's just a part of my childhood that's, you know, gone. And that was one of the, you know, golden ages of baseball, where it was just a time what, you know, we loved. And, you know, like I mentioned before about the Negro Leagues, is that, you know, we all have to have take a moment to remember that the sacrifice of guys like Ray Dandridge, Oscar Charlton, Josh Gibson paved the way for guys like Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Monty Irvin, Larry Doby, for all these guys, which paved the way for Reggie Jackson, Frank Robinson, Jackie Robinson, just paved the way for a lot of great players. Once the Negro League was, demolished more or less, or abandoned, and everybody, all the Negro players were coming into the major leagues, we just can't forget the roots. Rube Foster. There was a woman owner that I can't remember right off, but I should remember. But I did study the Negro Leagues when I was younger, and like I said, time has been really good to me, because like I said, now I see a lot of baseball players that have some of these qualities, just like some of the guys back in the day. When I was growing up in Delaware, we lived not too far from a guy that played in the Negro Leagues, Judy Johnson. And got a chance to not really meet him, but hear stories about him. And we used to say, wow, we had a really famous person right here in our backyard. But he passed away a little while ago, a long time ago. And, like I said, it was just one of those guys that we always knew the name and knew what he was, knew who he was, and respected where he came from. Like I said, the Negro Leagues is very interesting. Great stories. But it's just all about American history. And I'm not going to sit here and go through politics or nothing like that, but we all remember about the times that where the league was segregated, and one group was allowed to play and one group wasn't allowed to play. We have to pay homage to the guys that did play and the guys that made it and gave us the opportunity to make it in the big leagues and all. One of the reasons why I like Dave May Jr. is because he was basically he was a baseball player, and he still is involved in baseball, scout for the Toronto Blue Jays. I like Dave because he reminds me of just, pure greatness. His father played, his brother played, and I think about what would happen if Jackie Robinson wasn't there. He would not be able to play. But thank God for Jackie Robinson. Thank God for Willie Mays. Thank God for Hank Aaron. thank God for Larry Doby and all those other guys, because they paved the way for us to look at the game and have a good relationship with the American dream of playing baseball. One other thing I want you guys to know, that if you look at, well, I want to ask you a question. What does Kobe Bryant and Willie Mays have in common? Think about it. They both wore the number 8 and the number 24. And when I watched the game in Rickwood this week, the clock stops at 8:24 a.m. or p.m., the way, whatever you want to, time of day it is. It stopped at 8:24 because those were the two numbers that he wore, the same as Kobe Bryant. Like I said, hey, the Say Hey kid was one of the greatest, if not the greatest ball player that we've seen. There's a lot of guys that were, great, not taken away from anybody like Hank Aaron or Stan Musial or Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio. Not taking anything away from the guys, everybody that played the game. But we all know that, and mostly everyone has said that Willie Mays was the greatest baseball player of all time. My dad remembers, him when he was playing in his prime, in his heyday. He told me, he said, you really should have watched or seen Willie play. Now, I'm not going to keep going on and on about, Willie, but I wanted to say that, I thought it would be a proper tribute to take this time to think about Willie Mays and think about the Negro Leagues and the Rickwood game that played. I always have this thing about Major League Baseball. It doesn't do the right thing. But I got to admit, baseball really did the right thing this week with the Rickwood game. Okay. Like I said, I'm not going to keep dwelling on this, but like I said, Willie Mays was the greatest. We're all going to miss him. And like I said, this world will keep on ticking and keep on going. But we also have to remember that, these guys that are leaving us, think about your childhood. All right, guys. Well, anyway, like I wanted to say again, I really appreciate you listening. Thank you for your time. It's only going to be a half hour. I'm not going to keep dwelling on this, but I know I keep saying the same thing, but I just want to make sure that that, like I said, Willie Mays was very special to all of us. And I wanted to thank him and pay tribute to him at this time. Well, guys, like I said, you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your sports weekend. We'll be back next week with episode 225 of the GURU Talkin Sports podcast. Later, y'all.